20 years. That's how long Jake had been pouring drinks for every type of creature the galaxy threw at him. He'd seen four-armed traders from the Rigel system. He'd served drinks to insect-like diplomats whose names he couldn't pronounce. He'd even cleaned up after a bar fight between two species that breathed different atmospheres. You learned things in 20 years. You learned how to spot when someone was lying. You learned which aliens got mean when they drank and which ones just got sad. Most importantly, you learned when to mind your business and when to pay attention. Tonight felt different. The Vortac in the corner booth had been there for 6 hours straight. Vortacs were tough customers, mercenaries mostly, with gray-green skin that looked like armor and eyes that could see in 3 different light spectrums. This one had started drinking around sunset, if you could call it that, on a space station. Bottle after bottle of Rigelian whiskey, the kind that could strip paint off a hull. Most species couldn't handle 1 glass. This Vortac had downed 7 bottles and was finally unconscious, his massive head resting on the table. Jake glanced at the chronometer on the wall. Closing time. He grabbed a smaller rag and walked over to the booth, ready to wake the alien and send him on his way. He'd done this 1,000 times before. Drunk aliens weren't exactly rare in his line of work. But when Jake reached the table, something stopped him cold. The Vortac's arm had slipped off the table edge, hanging limp toward the floor. The sleeve of his combat jacket had ridden up, exposing his inner forearm. And there, etched into the gray-green skin in dark ink that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, was a tattoo. Not just any tattoo. Jake's breath caught in his throat. His hand froze halfway to the alien's shoulder. The symbol was intricate, beautiful in a deadly sort of way. A spiral that curved inward, getting tighter and tighter until it reached a central point. Around that spiral, the jagged pieces of a shattered star spread outward like broken glass. Jake knew that symbol. He'd seen it before. He'd worn it before. The cleaning rag fell from his fingers. His hands started shaking, actually trembling like he was some rookie seeing his first combat. Jake Miller didn't shake. He'd faced down armed raiders. He'd survived 3 assassination attempts back in his old life. He'd watched friends die and kept his cool. But seeing that mark, that specific symbol, after 15 years of thinking it was gone forever, that made his hands shake. Jake backed away from the booth, his eyes never leaving the tattoo. He reached into his pocket, fingers fumbling for his comm device. It was old, outdated by at least a decade. Most people carried newer models with holographic displays and instant translation. Jake kept this one because it had something the new ones didn't. A direct line. A code buried deep in its memory. A number he'd memorized 15 years ago and sworn he'd never need again. He pulled up the keypad with shaking fingers and entered the sequence. 13 digits. Each one felt like lifting a heavy weight. Each number dragged up memories he'd buried deep. Faces of people who weren't around anymore. Missions that officially never happened. A war that the public didn't even know had been fought. The line connected faster than Jake expected. No rings. No waiting. Just an instant click and then a voice, calm and professional. Earth defense, priority Omega. Jake's throat felt tight like someone was squeezing it. He had to force the words out, and when they came, they sounded strange to his own ears. Words he hadn't spoken in 15 years. This is Watchman 779. Designation Miller, Jake. There was a pause on the other end. Jake could hear breathing, could almost feel the person on the other end sitting up straighter, fingers probably already moving to verify his identity through voice recognition and embedded biosignatures that the old comm device automatically transmitted. Jake looked at the unconscious Vortac one more time, at that damn tattoo that represented everything he'd tried to leave behind. He swallowed hard and spoke the words he'd hoped never to say. I found him. Time moved strangely after that. Jake stood in his bar, comm device still in his hand, watching the Vortac sleep. Minutes felt like hours. His mind raced through possibilities, through protocols he'd learned in another life. Should he secure the target? Should he evacuate the bar? Should he run? He did none of those things. He just waited. 3 hours later, the station's proximity alarms went off. 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel right at the edge of the station's defensive perimeter. Military vessels. Earth Defense Force design. Jake felt a knot form in his stomach. They'd sent a full tactical response team. That meant they took his call seriously. That meant the higher-ups remembered what that tattoo meant. The bar's door didn't open. It simply wasn't there anymore. 1 second, solid metal. The next, a shimmering field of blue light as a teleportation matrix activated. Figures materialized in the light, solidifying from particles into solid forms. Commander Rebecca Stone stepped through first. Jake recognized her type immediately. Career military, probably 20 years in service, with the kind of cold competence that came from making life-or-death decisions on a regular basis. Her tactical armor was dark gray, fitted with enough weapons and gear to take down a small army. Her face was all sharp angles and hard eyes. Behind her, 6 more soldiers materialized, fanning out with weapons ready, securing the room with practiced efficiency. Rebecca's eyes found Jake first, then swept to the corner booth where the Vortex still slept, somehow undisturbed by the commotion. Her expression didn't change, but Jake saw something flicker in her eyes. Recognition maybe. Or fear. She walked toward Jake, her boots silent on the bar floor despite all the gear she carried. When she stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the small scars on her face from old battles, she spoke quietly. "You're certain?" Jake didn't answer with words. Instead, he set down his comm device on the bar and reached for his left sleeve. He rolled it up slowly, revealing his forearm. The skin there was marked with a scar, thin and pale against his tan. It was old, healed long ago, but the shape was still visible if you knew what to look for. A spiral within a shattered star. Exactly like the Vortex tattoo but removed. Cut away. Burned out. "I'd recognize the mark of the architect's hand anywhere," Jake said, his voice steady now. "I helped them design it." Rebecca stared at the scar, then nodded once. Behind them the Vortex stirred. The interrogation room aboard the EDS Indomitable was nothing like the ones you'd see in old movies. No single light hanging from the ceiling. No metal table bolted to the floor. Instead, the Vortex mercenary sat in the center of an empty white room, surrounded by a shimmering blue containment field that hummed with barely contained energy. The field could withstand a small explosion. It could neutralize almost any weapon. But mostly it was there to send a message. "You're not leaving until we say so." The Vortex called himself Kraith. Just that. No last name, no rank, no homeworld. He sat cross-legged on the floor, looking completely relaxed despite being a prisoner on a human warship. His gray-green skin caught the sterile light in strange ways, and his eyes, those triple-spectrum eyes that could see things humans couldn't, stared straight ahead at nothing in particular. He wasn't sleeping. He wasn't meditating. He was just waiting like he had all the time in the world. Above the interrogation room, separated by reinforced glass and about 6 different security protocols, Jake and Rebecca stood in the observation deck. Around them, screens displayed vital signs, brain activity, and a dozen other readings that specialists monitored. 2 interrogation experts had already gone into the room. Both had come out frustrated. Kraith hadn't said a word in 4 hours. Not one single word. Rebecca turned to Jake, her arms crossed over her chest. In the harsh light of the observation deck, she looked tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight you couldn't put down. "Explain it to me," she said. "All of it. I've read the classified files, but those are just words on a screen. You lived it." Jake leaned against the railing that separated them from the window, his eyes never leaving Kraith. Where did he even start? How did you explain 30 years of secrets, lies, and a war that most of humanity didn't even know happened? 30 years ago, Jake began, his voice quiet, "we thought we were special. Humanity finally cracked faster than light travel. We were so proud of ourselves. We built ships, sent out explorers ready to claim our place in the galaxy." He paused, remembering that feeling. That excitement. That hope. Then we met the others. Hundreds of alien species. Thousands of colonies. Trade routes that spanned half the galaxy. And we realized something that hurt more than any weapon. We weren't first. We weren't pioneers. We were late to the party. Really late. Rebecca nodded slowly. She'd read this part. Every Earth defense officer had. But that wasn't the worst part, Jake continued. The worst part was learning why we were late. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't that humans were slow or stupid. We were held back. On purpose. He turned to look at Rebecca directly. There was this organization. Ancient. Powerful. Secret. They called themselves the Architect's Hand. For thousands of years, maybe longer, they'd been manipulating galactic development. Deciding which species got to advance and which ones stayed primitive. They controlled technology, influenced governments, even started wars when they needed to. All to maintain some kind of order they thought was necessary. And humanity? Rebecca asked, though she probably knew the answer. We were on their containment list. Earth was supposed to stay primitive for at least another 1,000 years. Maybe forever. But something happened. Human scientists made breakthroughs faster than the Hand expected. We figured out FTL travel decades ahead of their schedule. We broke out of the box they'd built for us. Jake's hands gripped the railing tighter. That's when they initiated the silent war. Not an open conflict. Nothing the public would see. Just targeted operations designed to sabotage our expansion. Scientists disappeared. Colony ships suffered mysterious malfunctions. Leaders who pushed for space exploration had sudden accidents. Prototype reactors exploded. Data was corrupted. It was all very careful, very precise, designed to look like bad luck or human error. But someone figured it out, Rebecca said. Eventually, yeah. Earth Defense Intelligence noticed patterns. Too many coincidences. They started digging and found evidence of outside interference. That's when they created the Watchman Initiative. A counterintelligence operation so secret that most of Earth Defense didn't even know it existed. Jake touched his left forearm, where the scar was hidden under his sleeve. They recruited people with specific skills. Operatives who could pass for mercenaries, traitors, or criminals. People who could move through the underbelly of galactic society without drawing attention. The mission was simple but insanely dangerous. Infiltrate the Architect's hand. Get the mark. Gain their trust. Then tear them apart from the inside. You were one of them, Rebecca stated. I was. So were 46 others. We spent years working our way into the Hand's organization. We did things I'm not proud of. Became people we hated. All to maintain our cover. And it worked. Over 10 years we dismantled their leadership structure. We exposed their agents in various governments. We destroyed their databases, their communication networks, their supply lines. By the time we were done, the Architect's Hand was finished. Or so we thought. 15 years ago the war officially ended. The remaining Hand operatives scattered or went into hiding. Earth Defense declared the threat neutralized. Those of us who survived the Watchman Initiative got our marks removed, got new identities, and got scattered across human space. We became sleeper agents. Not active, just watching. The idea was that if the Hand ever came back, we'd be in position to spot them. Jake's voice dropped lower. But we all hoped it was really over. We hoped we could just live normal lives. 10 bar. Run cargo ships. Teach at universities. Whatever. Just be done with that life. Down in the interrogation room, Kratha's eyes suddenly moved. Not much, just a small shift. But it was the first movement he'd made in hours. Then he spoke, his voice amplified through the speakers in the observation deck. He wasn't talking to the interrogators. He was talking to the cameras. To Jake. To all of them. The Hand doesn't die, Watchman. It adapts. Jake felt ice run down his spine. Krath knew. He knew about the Watchman Initiative. He knew Jake was watching. Krath stood up slowly, the containment field crackling around him but not stopping him from moving. You thought you won. You thought destroying the leadership and scattering the cells meant victory. But the Architect wasn't stupid. He knew someone might succeed where so many others failed. He left instructions. Contingencies. Hidden protocols that would activate if the organization fell. The Vortax smile was terrible to see. It's called the Resurrection Protocol. When enough time passed, when humanity grew complacent and thought the threat was gone, we were instructed to return. Not as one unified organization that you could target, but as independent cells, each with specific missions, each unknown to the others. Harder to find. Impossible to destroy completely. We've been rebuilding for 15 years and you never noticed. Rebecca's hand moved to the communicator on her belt, but Krath wasn't done. The Architect left us something else too. Complete files on every watchman who infiltrated us. Every name. Every location. Every identity you thought was secret. Jake's blood turned to ice water. You're not hunters anymore, Miller. You're targets. Before anyone could respond, the comm panel in the observation deck lit up like a Christmas tree. Priority alerts. Emergency signals. Rebecca grabbed the nearest screen and pulled up the incoming data. Her face went pale. 3 alerts. 3 different sectors. Her voice was barely a whisper. Watchmen down. All killed in the last hour. Jake stared at the screen. He recognized the names. David Peterson, stationed on a mining colony in the Outer Rim. Kelly Hughes, running a transport business near the Core Worlds. Ryan Foster, teaching xenobiology at a university on New Terra. All dead. All within 60 minutes. The silent war hadn't ended 15 years ago. It had just been sleeping. And now it was awake again, and this time, the hunters had become the prey. The war room aboard the Indomitable looked like controlled chaos. Officers rushed between stations, holographic displays flickered with incoming data, and the air felt heavy with tension. Rebecca had called an emergency meeting, pulling in every senior officer available. The large circular table in the center was surrounded by faces Jake didn't recognize, Career military people who'd probably never even heard of the Watchman Initiative until today. Admiral Thomas Wright stood at the head of the table, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the kind of bearing that came from commanding fleets in actual combat. He waved his hand across the central display, and a three-dimensional star map materialized above the table. Red dots marked locations across human-controlled space. Each dot represented an attack. Each dot was a dead watchman. 7 confirmed kills in 12 hours, Wright said, his voice cold and clinical. David Peterson on mining colony Theta 7. Kelly Hughes near the trading hub at Arcturus Station. Ryan Foster on New Terra. Then 4 more in the last 6 hours. He zoomed in on the locations, showing timestamps. The attacks are coordinated. Professional. Each watchman was killed in a way that looked like an accident or random violence. A reactor malfunction here. A robbery gone wrong there. A shuttle crash. A food poisoning case. If we weren't specifically looking for patterns, we'd never connect them. Jake stood near the back of the room, arms crossed, watching the map with growing dread. He'd known some of these people. Worked missions with them. Trusted them with his life. Whoever is running this operation has perfect intelligence, Wright continued. They know exactly where each watchman is located. They know their routines, their weaknesses, their cover identities. That level of information doesn't come from luck. It comes from access to our most classified databases. We need to pull them in, Jake said, stepping forward. All of them. Right now. Get every surviving watchman off their current assignments and bring them to secure military facilities. If we don't act fast, they'll all be dead by the end of the week. Wright turned to face him, his expression hard. Absolutely not. We pull them all in, we confirm everything that Vortax said. We show the hand that we're scared, that we're reacting instead of acting. We show weakness. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. These are people, Admiral. Trained operatives, yes, but still people with lives. You're talking about leaving them out there as bait. I'm talking about maintaining operational security and not dancing to the enemy's tune, Wright shot back. The room fell silent. Other officers looked uncomfortable, but nobody spoke up. Jake opened his mouth to argue further, but Rebecca stepped between them. There's a third option, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. We don't pull them in and we don't leave them hanging. We activate them. Wright frowned. Explain. Rebecca turned to address the whole room. The watchmen weren't chosen randomly. They were selected because they could operate independently in hostile territory. They're trained in infiltration, intelligence gathering, and combat. They survived the first silent war by being better at the shadows than the hand was. She brought up profiles on the display, faces Jake recognized. Instead of making them targets or bringing them in where they can't do anything useful, we turn them into a counteroffensive strike force. We give them the resources and authority to hunt the hand operatives who are hunting them. Let them do what they were trained to do. Wright considered this, his jaw working. You're talking about unleashing unsanctioned operatives across human space. The political fallout alone is less important than stopping a secret organization from murdering our people and destabilizing human expansion, Rebecca interrupted. Sir, with respect, we're already in a war. We've been in one for 12 hours. The only question is whether we fight it or hide from it. Wright stared at her for a long moment, then looked at Jake. Miller, you were Watchman 779. You know these people. You know the protocols. Can you coordinate this kind of operation? Jake didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. The old communication channels are still active. Encrypted, secure, and completely off the official networks. I can reach every surviving watchman within hours and have them operational by tomorrow. Wright nodded slowly. Do it. You have full authorization to activate the Watchman Initiative. Report directly to Commander Stone. Everyone else in this room, this conversation never happened. Dismissed. The room cleared quickly, officers returning to their stations. Rebecca and Jake stayed behind, standing over the star map with its red dots marking the dead. You sure about this? Rebecca asked quietly. No, Jake admitted. But it's better than doing nothing. 3 decks below, in a laboratory that smelled like chemicals and recycled air, Dr. Emily Foster hunched over a scanning table, studying Krath's tattoo. Or rather, studying a detailed holographic reproduction of it. The Vortac was still in his cell, but they'd taken extensive scans of the mark on his forearm. Emily was a xenoarchaeologist, someone who studied the ruins and artifacts of dead alien civilizations. She'd spent 15 years digging through the remnants of species that had risen and fallen long before humans learned to make fire. If anyone could decode ancient symbols, it was her. She ran another scan, this time using quantum detection equipment that cost more than a small spaceship. The results made her sit back in her chair, staring. "That's impossible," she whispered. The tattoo wasn't just ink. It was embedded with quantum data, information encoded at a subatomic level that normal scans wouldn't detect. The mark was essentially a living database, carrying information in a format so advanced that human technology could barely read it. Emily spent the next hour extracting data. Coordinates to locations scattered across the galaxy. Encrypted messages in languages both human and alien. Access codes to systems she didn't recognize. And something else, buried deeper than everything else. Instructions. A pathway to something called the archive. She was about to call Rebecca when laughter echoed through the lab's speakers. Great. His cell was monitored, and apparently he'd been watching through the surveillance systems. "You think you're clever, Doctor?" His voice came through, amused and mocking. "Finding the quantum encoding? The hidden data? The architect wanted you to find it. He wanted you to find the archive." Emily's hand hovered over the comm button. "The archive is where the truth waits," Kraith continued. "The truth about humanity's real origin. About why your species was kept contained for so long. About what you really are." His voice dropped lower, more serious. "Your species isn't what you think it is, Doctor. When humans were primitive, barely more than animals, something visited your world. Something from beyond the known galaxy. Something so dangerous, so terrifying, that when the architect learned of it, he spent thousands of years making absolutely certain that humanity would never advance far enough to remember what happened." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "The containment wasn't about control," Kraith said. "It was about protection. Protecting the galaxy from what humanity might become if you ever remembered what you truly are." Before Emily could respond, Jake's communicator buzzed. He pulled it out, seeing a message on his old Watchman channel. A channel that hadn't been used in 15 years. The sender ID made his heart skip. "Lisa Grant. Watchman 342. One of the survivors." The message was brief and urgent. "Jake, I found something. Old ruins on an uncharted planet in the Threshold sector. The architecture doesn't match any known human civilization. Carbon dating puts them at 50,000 years old, but that's impossible. Humans were primitive then. We didn't even have agriculture. But someone built these structures, and they used human mathematical principles in the design. The hand is killing us because we're getting close to something. I think it's what Kraith mentioned. The archive. I'm sending coordinates. You need to see this." Jake looked at Rebecca, then at the star map still hovering above the war room table. The silent war was bigger than they thought. Much bigger. And somewhere in the Threshold sector, humanity's forgotten past was waiting to be discovered. Rebecca made the decision in under 5 minutes. She didn't ask Admiral Wright for permission. She didn't file mission reports or wait for authorization through proper channels. She just grabbed Jake, pulled Dr. Emily Foster from her lab, assembled a small tactical team of 6 soldiers she personally trusted, and commandeered a fast courier ship called the Nightingale. By the time Wright realized what was happening, they were already gone, jumping into faster-than-light travel toward the Threshold sector. The Nightingale was built for speed, not comfort. The interior was cramped, all metal walls and recycled air that tasted slightly metallic. Jake sat in the small crew compartment, checking weapons he hadn't touched in 15 years. His hands remembered the movements even if his mind had tried to forget. Emily sat across from him, reviewing Lisa's data on a portable screen, her face pale with a mixture of excitement and fear. "This could be career-ending for all of us," one of the soldiers said, a young woman named Carmen Rodriguez who handled communications. "Only if we survive," Rebecca replied from the cockpit. "If we don't, career concerns won't matter much." The journey took 18 hours of FTL travel, followed by another 6 hours of careful approach to avoid detection. The planet Lisa had found wasn't on any official star charts. It existed in a region of space that survey missions had marked as low priority, no significant resources. The perfect place to hide something you didn't want found. When they finally dropped out of FTL and approached the planet, Jake pressed his face against the viewport. The world below looked ordinary enough. Blue-green oceans, brown continents, white clouds. Similar to Earth in many ways, but the continents were shaped differently, and the oceans covered more of the surface. Lisa's ship, a small survey vessel called the Pathfinder, sat in orbit beside a temporary research station she'd set up. As the Nightingale docked, Lisa herself appeared in the airlock, and Jake felt relief wash over him. Another watchman still alive. Still safe. For now. Lisa Grant looked different than Jake remembered. 15 years had added lines around her eyes and streaks of gray to her dark hair. She'd been a demolitions expert during the Silent War, someone who could blow up a building or defuse a bomb with equal skill. Now she worked as a deep space surveyor, mapping unexplored regions for mining companies. "I knew you'd come," she said, gripping Jake's hand firmly. "When I found this place, I knew it was connected to everything. To the hand, to the watchman, to why they're hunting us now." They transferred to a shuttle and descended to the planet's surface. The ruins were located near the equator, in what looked like it had once been a major city. Now it was just broken stone and collapsed buildings slowly being reclaimed by vegetation that looked almost Earth-like but wasn't quite right. The main structure still stood, a massive temple or monument that rose maybe 300 feet into the air. The architecture was unlike anything Jake had seen. Geometric patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them from different angles. Doorways that were too tall for modern humans but somehow felt right. Steps worn smooth by countless feet over thousands of years. "Radiocarbon dating puts this at 50,000 years old," Lisa explained as they walked through the entrance. 50,000 years. That's when humans on Earth were still figuring out how to make better spears and living in caves. We didn't have cities. We didn't have writing. We definitely didn't have faster-than-light travel to other planets. Emily ran her hand along the wall, her scanner beeping softly. "But someone built this. And they used mathematical principles that match human thinking. The proportions, the angles, the way space flows through the structure. This was built by human minds." Inside, the temple opened into a vast hall. The walls were covered in murals, paintings that had somehow survived 50 millennia. The colors were still vibrant, protected by the dry air and some kind of coating that Emily said was unlike anything in her database. The first murals showed humans among the stars. Not primitive humans cowering in caves, but advanced humans wearing strange clothing, standing alongside aliens of various species. Ships that looked nothing like modern designs filled the backgrounds. Cities that stretched across continents. Massive structures in orbit around planets. "This can't be real," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast space. "Human history doesn't show any of this. We have archaeological records going back hundreds of thousands of years. There's no evidence of this level of civilization." But the murals continued, telling a story that made less and less sense the further they went. Humans trading with aliens. Humans building colonies on distant worlds. Humans exploring, discovering, creating. Then the murals changed. The next section showed something descending from space. It was hard to describe, like the artist couldn't quite capture what they were seeing. Dark. Vast. More like a shadow or a stain than a physical thing. The mural showed it touching planets, and those planets changed. Species that had been distinct became uniform. Civilizations that had been unique became identical. Like everything was being absorbed, homogenized, turned into one single thing. And humans were fleeing. The murals showed ships escaping, settlements being abandoned, entire populations running from something that couldn't be fought. Then came the most disturbing image. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, with features that weren't quite human or alien. The architect. The mural showed this figure doing something to Earth, to humanity. There was imagery of cities crumbling, technology failing, humans losing their knowledge and scattering into small tribes. Like someone had hit a reset button on an entire species. "He erased us," Jake said quietly. "He took away our civilization and made us forget." At the heart of the temple, they found something that wasn't stone or paint. A crystalline structure about 10 feet tall, perfectly preserved, humming with energy that their equipment could barely detect. The archive. Emily approached it carefully, pulling out the quantum scan data from Krath's tattoo. "The tattoo is a key," she said. "The quantum encoding is designed to interface with this structure." She uploaded the tattoo pattern to her portable equipment and aimed it at the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow, soft blue light spreading through its structure like veins lighting up. The light expanded outward, forming a three-dimensional projection in the center of the room. A figure appeared in the light. Humanoid but wrong. Its proportions shifted constantly, like it couldn't maintain a stable form. Or like it existed partially in dimensions humans couldn't fully perceive. The architect. "If you're seeing this, my great work has failed," the hologram said, its voice multiple tones layered over each other. "Humanity has reached the stars again. Become advanced again. Remembered enough to find this archive. Let me explain why that terrifies me." The hologram gestured, and images appeared around it showing the galaxy 50,000 years ago. Humanity was part of the galactic community. Young, yes, but brilliant. Curious. Brave in ways other species had forgotten. You pushed boundaries, explored regions others feared, and you found something. The image showed human ships venturing into the space between galaxies, into the vast dark emptiness where nothing should exist. You encountered something we call the Void Song. An entity, an intelligence, a corruption we still don't fully understand what it is. But wherever it touched, species changed. Not conquered. Changed. Transformed. Made into extensions of itself. Planet after planet fell. Species after species lost their identity and became part of something vast and hungry. The hologram's voice dropped, becoming almost sad. But humans were immune. Not just immune, you could fight it. Push it back. Your minds worked differently, thought in patterns the Void Song couldn't infect. You were the antidote to a disease that threatened all sentient life. Jake felt his chest tighten, watching images of ancient humans battling something that looked like living darkness. But you were too few. Too young. The Void Song adapted, tried new approaches. I made a choice I've regretted every day since. I used technology older than my own species. I reset humanity. Erased your cities, your knowledge, scattered you back to primitive tribes on your homeworld. I made you forget. The architect's form seemed to slump. It worked. The Void Song lost track of you. Eventually burned itself out over millennia. I created the hand to ensure you'd never advance again, never attract that attention. But I was wrong. Humanity doesn't attract the darkness. You're the cure for it. The hologram turned, seeming to look directly at them. If you're seeing this, I fear the Void Song has returned. And if it has, only humanity can stop it. I'm sorry for what I took from you. But please, finish what your ancestors started. The message ended with coordinates. A location at the very edge of the galaxy. Rebecca checked her portable star chart, and Jake watched the color drain from her face. What's there? He asked, though part of him already knew the answer would be bad. The Council of Civilizations is building their new capital in that sector, Rebecca said, her voice hollow. 200 species working together. 50 trillion souls. The largest gathering of sentient life in galactic history. They're breaking ground next month. The Void Song hadn't returned randomly. It had been waiting, watching, and now humanity had led it straight to the biggest target imaginable. The return to the Indomitable was tense and silent. Rebecca's unauthorized mission had violated about 15 different regulations, and everyone on board knew it. Admiral Wright was waiting when they docked, his face like carved stone. But Rebecca didn't care about regulations anymore. She marched straight to the detention level where Kraith was being held, with Jake and Emily right behind her. The Vortax sat in his cell, that same amused expression on his face, like he'd been expecting them. Rebecca deactivated the containment field and stepped inside, a weapon in her hand but pointed at the floor. The archive, she said simply. We found it. We saw the message. Now you're going to tell me the truth. All of it. Kraith's smile faded. For the first time since his capture, he looked genuinely serious. Almost afraid. You went to the ruins. You activated the architect's confession. He stood slowly. Then you understand nothing. The archive shows you what the architect wanted you to believe. A noble lie to make his genocide seem justified. Explain, Rebecca demanded. Kraith moved to the transparent wall of his cell, looking out at them. The Void Song isn't returning, Commander. It never left. It's been here the entire time, watching, waiting, evolving. For 50,000 years it's been patient, learning, adapting, waiting for humanity to reach the stars again because you're the only species it couldn't consume before. You're unfinished business. Jake felt cold spread through his chest. You're saying we led it right to the Council. The greatest gathering of sentient life in galactic history, Kraith confirmed. 200 species building a capital together. 50 trillion souls in one location. And humanity is there, participating, drawing the Void Song's attention like a beacon. You didn't just lead it there. You invited it to the largest feast it's ever seen. Admiral Wright arrived then, bursting into the detention level with security personnel. Commander Stone, you're relieved of duty. Miller, you're under arrest for unauthorized. Admiral, shut up and listen, Rebecca interrupted, which would have been career suicide under normal circumstances. She played the recording from the archive, the architect's holographic confession, on her portable device. Wright watched, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to horror. When it finished, he looked at Kraith. This is propaganda. A trick to create panic. Emily stepped forward, her tablet displaying streams of data. Sir, it's not. I've been analyzing astronomical readings from the edge of the galaxy. The sector where the Council is building their capital. There are anomalies everywhere. Dark matter readings that make no sense. Gravitational distortions that shouldn't exist. Communication disruptions affecting ships in the region. She pulled up more data, her hands shaking slightly. 3 survey ships went silent in the last week. Their last transmissions showed sensor readings of something massive. Not a ship. Not a space station. Something that's affecting space itself, like reality is sick in that region. Wright stared at the data, his face draining of color. But he wasn't ready to believe. Not yet. This could be natural phenomena. We don't understand everything about deep space. Admiral, Jake interrupted. We need to activate the Watchmen. All of them. Right now. Absolutely not. You're under arrest for. Then arrest me after we save 50 trillion lives, Jake shot back. The Watchmen are scattered across human space. They're already being hunted, already fighting. They're the only operatives we have who can move independently, operate outside normal command structures, and get to that sector before it's too late. Wright looked like he wanted to argue, but Rebecca spoke first. Sir, we're out of time for proper procedures. If Kraith is right, if the archive is right, we have maybe days before the council breaks ground on their capital. Once construction begins, once those 50 trillion souls are gathered in one place, it becomes a target too big to miss. The Admiral's jaw worked, decades of military discipline fighting against impossible circumstances. Before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the detention level. A communication officer's voice came through the ship-wide system, barely controlled panic evident. Priority alert. We're receiving a distress signal from the edge of the galaxy. It's Lisa Grant's survey ship, the Pathfinder. Jake's heart stopped. Lisa had stayed behind to conduct more research on the ruins. She should have been safe. Put it through, Wright ordered.